All right, now we're in Swimwear Data L2 Start. If you open it up, you're going to again get to a documentation page. If you click on the second tab, you're going to see a page that looks very much like what we just worked with a couple of examples of data tables that are a little bit prettier than what I did. And then lastly, click on the tab called Swimwear. This sheet is similar to the sheet we just worked with. We have some assumptions over on the left. The assumptions are in terms of units, cost of goods sold, marketing expenses, etc. We've got a few other expenses on here. And then on the right we have some projections. Okay, we have sales, cost of goods sold, basically all the same projections that we had before. The main difference between our last example and this example is here we've got 4 different categories of swimsuits. We have men's racers, men's trunks, women's one-piece racers, and then women's 2-piece suits. And we have all of these assumptions in terms of units sold, sales price, etc. for each of these categories. And basically all of these assumptions are flowing into summary projections over on the right that include all 4 categories of swimming suits. And so when you have this much data, if you want to vary something like units sold or cost of goods sold or distribution costs, you're not just varying units sold for one thing, you're varying units sold for 4 different things. And so if we want to do some meaningful projections, we might want to vary multiple variables and look at the results of that on multiple outcomes at once. So with this kind of scenario where we have lots and lots of variables that we might want to change, a data table is not going to be sufficient. We're going to need to do something called creating a scenario. Okay, we're going to create a scenario that's going to give us some answers while manipulating a bunch of variables. So looking over on the left side, we have some baseline assumptions, okay, for the 4 different categories. And let's say that we want to generate a few different scenarios based on varying marketing dollars and units sold. Okay, so obviously, the idea is if we increase our marketing expenses, then we're going to sell some more units. So what are some different combinations of marketing expenses and units sold that we might be interested in looking at? All right, so here's how I'm going to do this. I'm going to, again on the data menu, I'm going to go to what if analysis and then scenario manager. And with the scenario manager right now it tells me that there are no scenarios defined. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to generate 3 different scenarios that are going to show me 3 different sets of values for this data here. So I'm going to create a scenario, and let's say my first scenario is going to be a discount scenario. I want to try to market my swimming suits in discount stores and sell lots of swimming suits at places like Walmart and things like that. So I'm going to create a scenario. I'm going to click the Add button, and my scenario name is going to be discount. And then, as with Solver, we have something called changing cells. And so the question is, as with Solver, what am I going to change in this scenario? What are the things that I want to work with, essentially? And what I'm going to work with is I'm going to work with units sold for each of my suits. So that is C8 through F8. And then I'm going to type in a comma. And then I'm going to work with marketing dollars. So that's C8, or I'm sorry, C14. C14 through F14. All right, so my changing cells should say C8 colon F8, and then a comma, and then C14 through F14. And then if I want to put in a comment, if I want to prevent changes, I can do that with this scenario, and I'll say OK. All right, and now I need to enter values for each of my changing cells. Okay, so for this scenario, what do I want to stick in each of these cells? All right, what do I want each of these cells to be? And so to fill this out, I'm going to jump over to my that PowerPoint presentation, and if you look at slide 31, it has a list of values on it. And let me try to blow this up so you can see it better. So we look at the discount option, option 1. Then we have marketing expenses of $5,000, $10,000, $4,000, and $4,000. Okay, so coming back to Excel. Okay, my values are going to be 5,000 in C8, 10,000 in D8, 4,000 for E8, and 4,000 for F8. Okay, so in other words, here we're trying to we're forecasting that we're going to sell the most of the men's trunks, which is more of a low-end item, or an item that would be more likely to appeal to a greater number of people. And then looking at the so looking at the values in this scenario, we get option 1, which is the discount scenario. We have different amounts for marketing expenses and for units sold. All right. So for marketing expenses, we have marketing expenses of 5,000, 10,000, 4,000, and 4,000. All right, for each of the 4 types of swimming suits. So now jumping back over to Excel, I'm going to scroll down here. So my changing cells are C8, D8, E8, and F8. And then my marketing expenses are in C14 through F14. So my marketing expenses are going to be, for C14, it's going to be 5,000. For D14, it's going to be 10,000. For E14, it's going to be 4,000. And for F14, it's also going to be 4,000. All right, so in other words, we're spending most of our marketing dollars on the men's trunks, okay, because that is the marketing dollars that corresponds to D14. All right, and then if I come back to my data, if marketing expenses are those values, then my units sold are going to be these other values. Okay, so my units sold values are going to be 6,000, 15,000, 3,000, and 4,000. Okay, so coming back to my scenario, 6,000, 15,000, 3,000, and 4,000. Okay, so in other words, with this scenario, we're putting most of our marketing dollars towards men's trunks, and we're selling a lot of men's trunks. Okay, and I guess men's trunks is something that's more typical than Speedos, for example, or racing suits to be sold at a Walmart or something like that. All right, so this is my discount scenario, and I will then, after I've entered the values, I will say OK. And now I have now I'm back at my scenario manager, and I have this scenario called discount, and then I'm going to hit this button called show. All right, and you may not have picked up what happened there, but when I hit show, I'm going to now close this. What happened is it put in over here in the screen section, it put in my values. So it put in my different marketing costs here in row 14, my different units sold, And because these projections over here point to my green cells, now my projections have changed. So under the discount scenario, I've got about $1.3 million in terms of sales and about $138,000 in terms of revenue. Okay, income, marginal net income. All right, so this is my discount scenario. Okay, next I'm going to do a high-end scenario. All right, so I'm going to skip down here to option 3. So with my high-end scenario, I want to market more towards high-end stores, and in high-end stores I'm going to sell more women's suits is the plan. So my marketing expenses are going to be $5,000, $6,000, $5,000, and $5,000, and then my units sold are going to be $6,500, $6,000, $5,000, and $5,000. So let's do marketing expenses first. $5,000, $6,000, $5,000, $5,000. All right, I'm going to create a new scenario. I'm going to go to Data, What If Analysis, Scenario Manager. Here's my discount scenario. I'm going to say Add. And this scenario name is going to be High End. It has my same changing cells as before. Okay, so I've got that in there already. And now I'm going to enter values in my changing cells. Let me go back and check these. So marketing dollars, 5,000, 6,000, 5,000, 5,000. So 5,000, 6,000, 5,000, and 5,000. And then my units sold, 6,500, 6,000, 5,000, 5,000. 6,500, 6,000, 5,000, 5,000. Okay. I will say OK. And now I have my high-end scenario, and let's see what happens when I hit the Show button. Okay, my values have changed now. So now I've only got about $1 million in revenue and about, actually a small loss in terms of net income, $15,356. Okay. Now, let's go back to my scenario for a minute. Okay, if I go to the Scenario Manager and I say I want to edit my high-end scenario. Okay, so I'll click on this and I'll say Edit. Well, what it's going to do, it's first going to bring me here. I'll say OK. And now I've got my changing cells. Well, let's say, in this scenario, I've got 8 changing cells. And so value 1 is C8. All right, well, let's say I don't remember what C8 is. Okay, so now what I'd have to do is I'd have to come back to come look at my spreadsheet, and I would say C8 is the, let's see, this is my projection for units sold for men's racers. And so, okay, that's what that is. And then I'd come back here, and it's $6,500, so I'd enter that. And then, okay, what's D8? And then I have to come back down here, figure out what D8 is. Okay, so it's basically all I have to go on when I'm entering these values is my my cell names, and cell names are not particularly informative unless I've been working with this for a really long time and I've sort of memorized what the cell names are. So what I'm going to do is instead of going by the cell names, I'm going to give each of these cells a name. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go to the cell. I'm going to right-click on it. So I'm going to start here with C8, Men's Racers. And I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to say Define Name. All right, and my Excel is proposing the name Units Sold. And it's proposing that because it's next to this text here, which says units sold. But we want to make it a little more specific. We want to call it units sold men's racers. Okay, so units sold men's racers. Scope is the workbook, and then it says here it refers to swimwear, okay, the sheet swimwear, cell C8. And I'll say OK. All right, I'm going to do the same thing for men's trunks. I'm going to right click here. I'm going to say define name, and the name here is going to be units sold men's trunks. I'm going to right click on cell E8, and I'm going to call this units sold one piece, and I'll say OK. And then I'm going to right click here, and I'm going to call this units sold two piece. And then I'll say OK. I'm going to come down here to my marketing dollars. I'm going to right click on the marketing dollars for men's racers, and I'm going to call this marketing underscore men's underscore racers, okay, referring to C14. Whoops, hit the wrong thing. Define name, marketing men's trunks. Marketing, or no, we're calling these one piece. Marketing one piece. And then lastly, I hit the wrong thing again. Marketing two piece. Okay. Now, what good do these names do us? Well, if let's say, okay, I'm going to come in and define a new scenario now. Okay. So now I'm going to do the what we call the balanced scenario, and this is sort of an all-out marketing blitz where we're spending a good bit of money across all four categories. Okay, so my marketing expenses now are going to be $7,500, $7,500, $5,000, and $5,000. Okay, so if I come to data, what if analysis, and scenario manager, I will add a new scenario called balanced. Still changing C8 through C14, so I don't need to change that. I hit OK. Now, instead of the cell names over here, I've got some more useful names for my scenarios. Okay, so now instead of saying C8, it says units sold men's racers. Instead of D8, it says units sold men's trunks, etc. Okay, so a little more intuitive to maintain. If I look at this, my units sold, there's going to be 11,500, 12,500, 8,000, and 9,000. All right, so 11,500, 12,500, 8,000, and 9,000. If I scroll down here, I've got my marketing dollars. Okay, marketing men's racers, men's trunks, one piece and two piece. My marketing expenses are going to be $7,500, $7,500, $5,000, and $5,000. $7,500, $7,500, $5,000, $5,000. Okay. So now I have my balanced scenario. I will say show, and it's going to show this to me. And here is my new set of projections based on this scenario. So I now have sales of 1.8, marginal net income of 197. So the nice thing about scenarios is I can create multiple scenarios and store them, and then I can look at them again and again. So if I'm looking here at my balance scenario, I want to go back and look at my discount scenario again. I can go back to my scenario manager. I can say discounts and then show, and it'll show me that scenario. Okay, so I can switch back and forth between my different scenarios and compare different sets of input values along with the associated outcomes. The other nice thing I can do with scenarios is I can create a summary report that shows me all of them. So here on the Scenario Manager, I can click Summary, and it's going to ask me, do I want to create a scenario summary or a scenario pivot table report? So we're going to do pivot tables later on. I'm going to do a summary, and I'm going to say OK. Oh, excuse me. So before I say I want to create a summary, I need to tell it what my result cells are. All right, so which cells I'm interested in. And so by default here, it is selected K21, which is my marginal net income, and that's good. I want to look at that. Let's say I also want to look at sales. So I'm going to click on K21, and I'm going to type in a comma, and then I'm going to click K8, and let's say just those two. Those are what I'm interested in. So I'll now click OK. All right, and so what I've got now is I've got a new sheet in my workbook, and it's called Scenario Summary, and it shows me all of my values. All right, so here are my changing cells. Notice that it takes the names. Okay, so it's not just telling me the cell names; it's telling me what I've called them. And here were the original value, or what the current values are, and what the values are for each of my scenarios. Let me blow this up a little bit. So my cells, my scenario values, and then here at the bottom, my results cells. And so K21 is my marginal income before taxes. And so I can see that under the discount scenario, that's 138. High end, I'm losing money. Balanced is 197. K8 is my revenue. And again, the balanced is the highest revenue. And probably what I should have done is I could have given my marginal income before taxes cell and my revenue cell names also, and then those would show up here under results. Okay, so that would have made this report look a little bit nicer. So we're going to work with names in a couple of other labs too, but this is our introduction to them. So this is how you generate scenarios in Excel using the Scenario Manager. So now you can save this spreadsheet, and once you have both your spreadsheets, you can submit them under Excel Lab 7.